Mr. North and South American, all ships at sea, let's go to
the Bitchspot Report. Welcome to the Bitchspot Report, the podcast with news and views from a distinctly conservative atheist perspective, with your hosts, Cephas and Out West. We hope we can entertain, educate, perhaps even enrage you. Now let's begin this episode of the Bitchspot Report. And welcome to the third episode of the Bitchspot Report. I'm your host, Cephas, and here is...
I'm Out West.
Welcome, and hopefully you've been enjoying the show so far. Like we've said before, if you like the show, tell somebody. If you don't like the show, tell us. We can't improve if we don't hear from you. We do have links on our webpage, both to email, to Twitter. We're up on iTunes, so make sure that you find us, you listen to us, and you rate us. And now
for the news. And the first article I want to bring up today is something I saw earlier this week, Cephas, and the headline is, Group in Indiana wants, quote-unquote, traditional high school prom banning gay, lesbian students. And when I saw that, I thought, what the hell? What the hell is that? You know? And we have the links on our page, of course, for you listeners. And the first paragraph of this story reads, some parents, students, and clergy is an interesting thing to say here, in an eastern Indiana city want to separate high school prom banning gay and lesbian students. What do you think about that?
Well, and actually, if you read through the story, what they're really saying is, we love the homosexuals, but we want everyone to know that we hate them.
Well. Here's the thing here. Down among the 4 or 5 paragraphs down, it says here, among the supporters is Diana Medley, a special education teacher at nearby North Central Junior Senior High School in Northeast School Corporation, blah, blah, blah. And she says, we don't agree with homosexuality, and it's offensive to us. Homosexual students come to me with their problems, and I don't agree with them. But I care about them. It's the same thing with my special needs kids.
Well, lady, if you can't do the job that you've been hired to do, then why don't you go find a job someplace else? I'm sick and tired of people who do this.
Well, here's the thing, Cephas, is I was thinking, like, it's the same thing as for special needs kids. I mean, you know, let me tell you something. Years and years ago, when I was a young man, I actually dated a special needs teacher for about a year. And she dealt with special needs kids. We don't want to use the R word here.
Why the hell not?
Well, they were retarded. They were, kids. They were wonderful, by the way. They were wonderful children because I went to the school 2 or 3 times during the time that we dated. And they were wonderful, beautiful children. And actually smart in their own ways. I mean, they could do things that I couldn't do. And to have this woman, it offends me. It just offends me. When I read that one statement in this article, forget about the rest of the article. And everybody, it's on the webpage, and you can read the entire article. When I read that one statement, it offended me because she's equating gays and lesbians to kids that are mentally deficient. And it's not, I have a cousin who's a Down syndrome child, and she's actually older than me. And she's a wonderful person. And it offends me. I don't know what you think about it.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if that's really what she meant to say, that she was comparing the two.
It's easy to see. It's easy to see. Just read the article. I mean,
you also don't know what the context was of what she said.
Well, yeah, of course I don't, because it's in a news article. And as we all know, the news tries to blow up stuff.
I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt that that's not really what she intended. If that was, she's a bitch. But if it's not, I'm cool with that. But really where I wanted to go with this is, I mean, don't these people know that the separate but equal thing has been struck down by every court in the land? If they decide to do this, and this is not the first school district that's tried it, not by any shot. If the sucker goes to court, it's going to get thrown out because it's entirely unconstitutional. You can't do what they want to do. And all this money is going to come right out of the pockets of taxpayers who would have every right to be pissed off. To be really honest, and I've said this about a lot of different things, you have all the people in, all the congressmen and senators who will propose all kinds of ridiculous religious legislation that they know for a fact will never go anywhere.
Well, here's the thing, is that here's two conservatives talking about this. And hopefully everybody knows by now that we are two conservatives talking about this. And this offends the both of us, that a school district would introduce religion, would introduce some kind of separation between people. It offends me.
But it's not really the school district that's doing it.
No, it's not.
It's parents.
It's community.
And,
yes,
and they're all a bunch of religious retards anyway.
But you understand the school district is the parents, right? And so the school district, hopefully on this, maybe we can report on this next week, will quash this.
Oh, I'm sure they will, because they're not stupid. It's like it's like all the creationist crap that ends up going, the parents groups and the PTAs and say, we want creationism in our school. And the schools are going, are you out of your freaking mind? We know this is going to go to the courts. We know it's going to lose.
Cephas, is that there are school districts, and you know this. We both researched this a lot. They fight it in court, and they spend taxpayer dollars. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money to fight it in court. What I'm hoping is that this school district in Indiana, Sullivan, Indiana, by the way, if anybody wants to know, if I didn't mention it before, that they fight this and tell those neocon. And I want to make the difference here. We talked about this on our first podcast. Neither Cephas or I are neocons, okay?
We're not idiots.
Yeah, we're not stupid people. We are classic conservatives. But that these neocons get out of the public venue. Now, I'm not saying they don't have the right to speak, have the right to say, or anything else. But I am actually a true constitutionalist. I don't know about you, but I am. And I believe that in a perfect separation of church and state, even though it's not written in the Constitution, Thomas Jefferson wrote it in 1804, if I remember correctly, and that's where the Supreme Court has based its opinions on. I don't want religion. I don't want people's religious ideas to interfere with the growth, intellectually or socially, of any child. And we're going to see there are gay children out there. I'm sorry, there is. If you don't like that, turn off this program now, because there are those kids out there. And what we have to do as conservatives is support that, I was going to say lifestyle, but it's really not a lifestyle. But
it is what it is.
It is what it is.
They're gay, and that's the way it is. And it's no different than having brown hair or blue eyes.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly. It's genetic. I mean, you have blue eyes, you have green eyes, you have hazel eyes, your kid is gay. Get over it and support your child. If you're a conservative, support your child. Don't ban them from the family table for supper. Don't kick them out of the house. Don't not allow them to go to the prom with their significant other, male or female. What is the matter with America, Cephas?
Because nobody understands equality. You can't just have equality for some groups. You have to have equality for all groups, and these people are just stupid.
Well, I think it's a matter of, like what you said in our first podcast about the neocons have taken over. That's a sad thing for me as a conservative. And I'm a staunch conservative to anybody who's listening. But the neocons have taken over. The real conservatives, and I think there are a few of us now, by the way, don't hold to those standards. Okay, next story.
All right. 67-year-old Samuel Mullet Jr. has been convicted of running an Amish crime ring which went around and cut off the hair and beards of other Amish who disagreed with Mullet's authoritarian religious style. Back in 95, Mullet broke away from traditional Amish beliefs, seeking a more fundamentalist scriptural interpretation in his compound, which is located in northeast Ohio. According to those beliefs, once a couple is married, the man is to stop shaving and allow his beard to grow, and the woman is supposed to stop cutting her hair. Mullet's actions went to the heart of those insular beliefs by directly cutting the hair, which they see as an affront against God. So do you think that this is just a really ridiculous religious superstition, or should Mullet be put in prison for 15 years for essentially assaulting other people?
15 years?
Yep.
You know what? Cephas, I really thought about this. I don't know if anybody has ever seen, and I've watched not very many episodes because I don't really watch reality TV. Dog the Bounty Hunt. For anybody that can relate to that, please raise your hand.
You couldn't see him if they did.
Okay. Well, I don't really care. Dog the Bounty Hunt. I don't know if anybody has ever watched the show. I've watched. I'm not really a reality person. I've watched a couple of shows. This guy's a convicted murderer from Texas. Spent 12 years in prison. And of course, over the past several years, I think they canceled this show this last year, has made millions. A freaking convicted murderer. And yet, this guy, and here's where I'm going, Cephas, cuts beards and hair and gets 15 years? I don't get it. Please inform me.
Well, you got to remember, this guy will never spend 15 years in prison. He'll get out after maybe 5 for good behavior.
Why is he even doing 5?
Well,
for cutting beards and hair?
Well, it might be silly, but what he actually did was assault. He's being put
assault.
away for assaulting a whole bunch of people. Now it's ridiculous.
It's called assault and battery. That's at most, in every state I've lived in your state, I've lived in, 7 states in the United States. That's maybe, and I did some research here, that's maybe a 5-year sentence for assault and battery. Because assault is putting your hands on somebody, right?
Yeah.
Battery is actually like hitting somebody or cutting their hair and beard. That's battery. For instance, in California, you could be arrested for just threatening somebody. That's called assault. And pretty much in every state that I've ever lived in, I've lived in 7 states, assault is not a physical act, it's a threat. Battery is when somebody, if they threaten you, and then they put your hand on your shoulder or anywhere on your body, that's called battery. That's assault and battery. And people really don't understand that, because assault can be just verbal. And you could have somebody arrested for assault if they just threaten you on the street or in your office or wherever you are. And that's where I was going there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the sentence is a little bit heavy. I think that the whole crime is really pretty ridiculous.
I do too. I think 15 years?
Oh, even if it was like 1 year.
I would think 30 days in lockup, at the county. Okay, maybe 30 days.
Yeah, I think he'll get out early. To be perfectly honest, he's already said he's not going to stop. So if he's in there for 15 years, he's going to get out after 15 years and go back to doing the same thing because he's not repentant at all.
Yeah, well, and why should he be?
Well, when you have crazy beliefs, this is where you go.
Yeah, and that's where it's all about. It's about having religious beliefs that don't. Here's the interesting thing about this. In their culture, that's the right thing to do. And understand that Amish don't, even though, yes, they pay taxes and whatever, but they separate themselves from the rest of us, from us English.
Yeah, and you have to remember that these are fundamentalist Amish who even separate themselves from other Amish.
Yeah, that's true.
These are crazier than the crazies.
And you know what? I'll be honest here. I actually don't care. You know why? It's because religious people, religious fundamentalists, unless they harm somebody, and beard cutting, hair cutting, okay, that could be harm. Yeah, that's assault. That's going to the county jail for a little while. Unless they actually hurt somebody, physically hurt somebody, where they have to go to the hospital, or unless they kill somebody, no.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it.
I'm not either. But what I am worried about is that this might become a trend.
What, gangs of people with scissors running around the hillsides?
No, not gangs of people with scissors. It's gangs of Christians or Muslims. I mean, we have a very small Muslim population in the United States. And there are fundamentalists in every religion that, believe what they believe, they're going to do what they're going to do. I'm sorry, that even comes into the Christian religion. I mean, think about those people that have killed abortion doctors. Yeah, okay, it's a very much minority. But the people that supported them is much larger.
Or at the very least, that tolerate them.
Exactly.
That don't, there's a difference between actually supporting an action and just tolerating the action because you don't want to speak out against your own group.
As far as I'm concerned, if you tolerate the action, you support the action. Come on. Let's be realistic here. If you tolerate, they were doing down in Gitmo, waterboard, then you support it by default.
Right.
So it's the same thing. I mean, people need to speak out about these things, and they won't, of course, because people that go into their churches and they won't speak against their pastors or their priests. Anyway, next story. Sorry. Sorry I rambled for so long.
That's all right. Take it away.
Scientology's worst enemy. Can you believe it? Scientology has an enemy? That is their worst enemy? Believe it or not, it's Jenna Miscavige Hill. She's the niece of the Scientology leader, David Miscavige. And now she's coming out way against the whole cult of Scientology. What do you think about that?
Well, it's about time. I mean, she's hardly the only person who's come out and done a tell-all book about how awful this quote-unquote religion actually is. But I think that just because she is so close to the leadership, that it's probably going to give you a lot more detail on what goes on behind the scenes than things that we've seen in the past.
Well, she says in her book, we would get rocks out of the running creek, and it was freezing cold. A lot of times our uniforms didn't fit us, and blah, blah, blah. She goes on and on and on about being indoctrinated into Scientology. And this was a 29-year-old woman, a young woman. And how many times in our lives, Cephas, have we seen cults? And Christianity is a cult as far as I'm concerned. Even though there's a couple of billion people that believe in it, it's still a cult as far as I'm concerned. The Scientology, there's how many? There's several million that subscribe to that, where they are programmed. They are literally programmed to believe.
Well, yeah, but Scientology is like a microcosm of every other religion out there. It's kind of the laughable younger brother of Christianity and Islam and Judaism and all these other religions, because it operates exactly the same as they do. But you take a look at it, and even the Christians and the Muslims can look at it and say, well, that's just the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, not realizing that they're actually looking in the mirror.
Well, I don't think these people do, because L. Ron Hubbard, and I actually read 30, 40 years ago, what was the freaking movie that was made on it? The original book, not called Scientology, but the original
Dianetics?
Yeah, Dianetics. It wasn't Dianetics. It was the science fiction book where...
Battlefield Earth.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Oh, so you're a fan, huh?
No. and don't watch the movie. That's one of the worst movies ever.
Actually, I watched that movie.
I've seen it.
I've watched that movie 3 or 4 times just to pick it apart. I know that all the actors in there are Scientologists, of course, and they're all trying to put forth a Scientology worldview, and it's an interesting film from that perspective. I mean, if you sit there and analyze it, and if you know the actors in it, then and you know where they come from, Scientology, then you can sit there and go, Now I understand this.
Yeah, well, they don't really want you to understand it, because if you understand it, you're just going to sit there and point and laugh.
Yeah. So
I mean, to be honest, I don't even know if her book's out yet. Certainly haven't read it.
it's coming. It's coming out really soon. And
Okay.
we will put a link for all you listeners out there on our website when the book does actually come out. I promise you, Cephas, I'll be like looking every day for the publication date and put it out there on our website and on your website, which is, oh, by the way, if nobody goes to read Cephas's website, it's called Bitchspot, by the way, and you should go out there and read it every day. You'll see all kinds of stuff out there. Today we were debating Amazon.com, for instance. So, please go out there and look at his website. But on this website, we will also have a link to the book when it comes out.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to our next story. And this is a good one. Just when you thought you heard it all, this story comes from ChristCultureNews.com. It's about a Brazilian evangelical minister named, and I'm going to mess this up, I'm sure, Valdice Sabrino Picanto, who has told his parishioners that his penis was blessed by God and that the milk of the Holy Spirit would ooze from his penis, and it must be released in order for him to evangelize and bring people to God. All right, I think you can see where this is going. When I first saw the story, I thought it was some kind of a hoax, but after seeing it on dozens and dozens of websites, at least 2 or 3 languages, some of which seem to be mainstream credible sites, I've got to wonder if this isn't real. I mean, it's not like pastors haven't gotten caught with their hands in the cookie jar, and if for no other reason, talking about this story just goes to show that it's not just the Catholics who have sex abuse problems. So what do you think about this?
I think it's hilarious. You know what? I wish every woman I met, I'm not married, as you know, thought that every ounce of my semen that went into her was holy milk. What the hell? What the hell is that? I mean, is he going to have the next Jesus or the next Mithra or the next what? What's the purpose of that?
We know what the purpose of that is, so he can get off. But this is not the only story like that. That's the problem. This is very, very common, and this seems to be very common in Central and South American Catholic communities. There was another story I did a couple of weeks ago on somebody in Mexico who's running a Christian sex cult who claims to be the reincarnation of Jesus, and he's not only is he sleeping with every woman he can find, he's sending as many of them as he can out to be prostitutes to give him money. And they're buying it.
Well, here's a problem with, and I'm not going to condemn the entire Roman Catholic Church on this.
No.
But with the Catholic Church is that they've allowed, I mean, if you're going to impose your religion, your beliefs on somebody, not to allow them to deviate, from them. Well, let's look at Mexico versus the Day of the Dead. You know what? The Day of the Dead is an Aztec ritual, that the Catholic Church endorses. That in Mexico, when they do the Day of the Dead, that's a ritual that, fine, we're going to do this.
Well, you have to remember that the whole means that the Catholic Church grew back through the Dark Ages, etc., was they would move to an area, they would look at all the rituals that were already being done and said, well, let's see, we can borrow this one, and this one, and then we've already got an automatic in with these people when we convert them.
But what's with this dude that thinks that his, quote, milk from his penis is somehow spiritually activated? Who in the hell? I was going to say another word, but as a conservative, I try to not use too much offensive language, but no, I am. Who in the fuck is going to believe that?
Well, that was my real point. Was you've got all these stories, and I mean, I'm not blaming the Catholic Church at all. All right, it has nothing to do with the Catholics necessarily. I'm just looking at all these people who are brought up in a Catholic tradition or in a Christian tradition, who see these stories that you or I or any rational person on the planet would look at and say, you're an idiot, but they buy into it because they've been raised to think that religion, that this kind of nonsense actually makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me because people, and we're going to get into this a little bit later, and there's people even on our side of the bar. You know, there's a bar between atheism and religion, as far as I'm concerned. And there are skeptics, and we're going to get into this in a few minutes, that go between the two. In fact, I know skeptics, and I don't want to get into this too much because we're going to talk about this, that are religious. And I know religious people that won't even bother to talk about anything. But this guy is just pitiful. This guy is just incredibly pitiful. What is he doing? And I'm going to be rude here, okay? So please close your children's ears if you're listening to this. Is this guy trying to get somebody to suck his dick?
Oh, I'm sure he's putting it wherever he can find.
Well, I'm sorry about that. I really didn't want to say that, but the whole story offended me to that degree where I had to become crude, and I apologize to you, my friend, as well. What does this guy want? That his semen is holy milk, and now what? Now what?
Well, he wants a blowjob. Come on.
Okay.
You know, let's be honest. He has a large group of very gullible people, and he's going to take advantage of them. And these people who should be smarter than this aren't.
Well, of course they're not, because of course, and I'm not saying this for all religious people, because I've known people. You know, I have advanced degrees. You know me. I have advanced degrees.
Same here.
And I used to be religious, and you used to be religious, and you are a very smart person as well. But finally, we came to the conclusion that none of this crap made sense, okay? And I still know people who are engineers and physicists and chemists and whatever that go to church every weekend and still believe. And cannot imagine, even though they know, they cannot imagine. Okay, well, we carried this on.
Yeah, and we're going to get to a lot of this in a minute. So let's go ahead and do our last news story for the week.
Okay, our last news story is about the Pope resigning his position, which hasn't been done, actually, according to my information, in over 700 years. And what's really interesting about this is just that. You know, since the 14th century, no pope has ever resigned his position. And so the interesting thing about this is the story that's linked on our page is the possibility that there may be groups out there, from Europe especially, that may be filing charges against him with the international ICC. And how is that going to work since he's a head of state? I mean, every nation in the world agrees that the Vatican and that the Pope is a head of state. So how does that work? I don't know. But there's a lot of countries out there, and you can see it on our website right there. There are groups of people that are thinking about with the International Criminal Commission, which is in the Netherlands. Is it in the Netherlands?
Yeah, I think it's at The Hague.
Oh, it's at The Hague, which is in the Netherlands.
Yes.
Want to file criminal charges against him for pedophilia, because before he was Pope, what they're claiming is that he did pedophile.
Well, my thing is, I don't think he's ever done anything criminal himself. At best, they might be able to get him for conspiracy charges, because there are some cases specifically that he can be directly linked to. I don't really think that anybody has any way to go after him criminally. They might be able to go after him civilly, but let's be honest, it's never going to happen.
Well, let's think about this. You know, if we go after a head of state, and I realize, I mean, honestly, I can't imagine why anybody recognizes a 1 or 2 square mile piece of property as a state. You know, it's just a bunch of buildings, a bunch of churches as a state, and that this guy is a head of state. I've never understood that. But given that he's a head of state, what happens then? If these people are somehow successful in the International Criminal Court to get their case brought before them, does that mean we can go back and, Nixon is dead, and Gerald Ford is dead. Jimmy Carter is still alive, by the way. Can we go back through our own presidents that are still alive and that the ICC can charge them with criminal acts? For instance, let me give you an example. When Clinton was president, there was a bombing in Bosnia, when Clinton was trying to, whatever he was trying to do, that hit the Chinese embassy and killed, as far as I remember, 2 people in the Chinese embassy. So can Clinton be brought up on charges, even though he's been out of office since 2001?
I honestly don't think anything will ever come of this. Let's be honest. Because the Vatican is its own country, and I'm sure that once the Pope leaves office, he's never going to leave because that country, or the Vatican will never extradite him to anywhere anyway. So he's safe from prosecution for any crime that anybody could come up with, no matter what. It's not like we're going to have, the U.S. airdropping.
Well, it's not about what he committed as Pope, by the way.
Well, no, it doesn't matter. They'll never give him
what he committed before he was Pope.
They'll never give him up.
Okay.
It won't happen. So they can file all the charges they want in The Hague. It's irrelevant because he'll never stand up to any of those charges.
And I agree with that. I just thought it was an interesting story, and I know there's a lot of Catholic haters out there. I actually am not one. I mean, I really don't give a shit one way or the other. But it's an interesting story, and click on it, and please read.
Hey, maybe he'll escape to one of those South American countries where the Catholic Church was hiding the Nazis. Hey, it worked for them.
Argentina.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Because we all know that the Catholic Church did knowingly smuggle Nazis out of Germany after World War II on Red Cross visas.
Yes, we do.
They supported the Nazis no matter what this guy says. Mr. Hitler Youth.
Okay, and now on to...
This is the Leave It!
I think it's about time we handled this subject. It's something that does come up from time to time, and I think is very, very important to discuss. When a lot of people within the atheist community talk about atheism, they assume that everyone who shares that worldview is a skeptic, an individual who examines their beliefs and the world around them from a rational, intellectual, and logical standpoint. However, it is clear that there are a lot of people who call themselves atheists who do not do any of these things. And even for those that do apply those valuable tools to their non-religious beliefs, clearly they do not do so for other beliefs that they have that may have nothing to do with religion. There are atheists, for example, who are anti-vaxxers, who believe that aliens run the government, that Bigfoot roams the Pacific Northwest, and that crystals can make you well. I think it's plain that simply being skeptical about one particular subject does not make one a skeptic, or someone who is skeptical of all things across the board. All right, well, as much as I hate to bring this up, this is really a problem that has happened in the atheist community, especially what has happened with the Atheism Plus movement, where people who may be skeptical atheists have revealed that when it comes to social justice, they're absolutely not skeptics. Their beliefs and positions are almost fanatically religious.
And that's an interesting thing that you bring up there because, I think that what we first need to do is agree, just like we've added in the show notes, just what is skepticism.
Right.
And so that people that may not have a grasp on that, I'm not sure if people listening to this are atheist skeptics. They may be just regular people. What really is skepticism in your view, Cephas?
Well, I want to make a distinction between what it is to be a skeptic and what it is to be skeptical. To be skeptical, and this is depending on the particular topic, is to go after something and follow where the evidence leads to a conclusion. It is not like we see with the religious to start with a conclusion and then go out and look only for the evidence that supports your conclusion and reject all else. To be a skeptic, however, is to take those skeptical tools and apply them to everything across the board throughout your life, to politics, to religion, to everything. And that's why there are so many people who, I will say, yes, they are certainly skeptical about certain things. They may be very skeptical when it comes to religion, but when it comes to politics, they may be completely non-skeptical. This is actually very commonplace amongst religious apologists. If you've ever looked at some of their arguments, that they'll say, oh, look, if this person or that person is a scientist or a philosopher, and therefore these are skeptical people, and so they were also religious. That makes religion something that stands up to skepticism. And it certainly doesn't. It only proves that this person was skeptical in one particular area of their life, or many particular areas of life, but not in all areas of their life. And this is something that I am seeing among atheists as well.
And I do too, and I would agree. For instance, as you know, I've talked to you about this before. I have a best friend in the world is a preacher in Oklahoma. We grew up together. I've known him for over 40 years. And he is an evangelical, actually he's a fundamentalist kind of preacher. And he is, of course, skeptical of UFOs and Bigfoot and things like that. But is he truly a skeptic? Well, no, he's not, because he won't take his own beliefs and apply the same scientific method to that as he would to anything else that he doesn't agree with. And skepticism for me, and being a skeptic, is, like you said as well, I agree with that, is applying that method to everything. And yes, I could take your word for it's raining outside because maybe you're looking out a window. But I may not take your word for it when you say an asteroid is about to fall on my town.
Oh, exactly.
I probably won't take your word for it.
Well, one of those is an extraordinary claim. One of those is something that we all have experience with. It's very commonplace. It's not unusual to think that somewhere out there it's raining right now.
Well, and so what I'm saying, what I'm basically getting at, though, is that we don't have to take every statement an individual makes and put it through the scientific method, okay? All we have to do is take those things that, as you said, seem to be extraordinary claims and question them. And they don't even have to be extraordinary. They can just be, we can ask the question, I believe, is this opinion or is this fact? If it's fact, show me the data that you have for this.
Yeah, where's the evidence? That's all that should matter to any of us is, where's the evidence? Where's the reasoning? Where's the logic behind this? Show me how you get from A to B to C to D, and defend each and every one of those steps. And unfortunately, and I hate to talk about Atheism Plus because it's an embarrassment to atheism, but they are the perfect example for exactly how this happens, where you've got people who, by and large, are very intelligent people. They're very skeptical people. They understand how to examine things using the scientific method. They have done this with religion. Most of these people have spent years and years and years blogging and debating and all this stuff with theists. They understand how the process works. But as soon as it gets to something to which they have an emotional attachment, all that gets thrown out the window, and all of a sudden, they've got faith. And there's nothing but that.
Well, of course, and it is more like a religion. And you understand, and I want the listeners to understand as well, that the quote-unquote founder of Atheism Plus, Jen McWright, who's I think she's a grad student at UW in Seattle in genetics, has disowned it, has disavowed it.
Lots of people have.
Well, I mean, she was the one that first proposed it as a rallying cry for people to become part of social justice, even though actually she wasn't the first. But she was the one that everybody rallied behind. She's even disavowed this because these people have become so petty as to talk about how people use words or phrases.
Oh, they just make up their own words.
What words you use and what phrases you use. And so it's like, holy cow, man, am I living in Nazi Germany? Or, sorry, I just went,
You just went straight for the Godwin. It's all right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But you know what I'm saying? I went to some dictatorship where I can't read this book or I can't say this word.
Well, remember, that's exactly where the whole liberal concept of political correctness came from. We can't dare make anybody feel bad about anything for any reason, whether they deserve it or not. So we have to completely change the language and stop anybody from using any word that anyone could conceivably get offended by.
And that's a shame because, you know what, I'll be honest, I don't live my life on the net, as you know, because there's days that go by that you go, hey, where the hell are you? But I live enough on the net to know that, I can be offended, and so what?
Yeah, nobody has a right to be offended. And I think this is because this is a great place to bring this up, because a number of days ago, I think it was the day you weren't around, but I responded to something on Twitter that Justin Vakula said. And I just responded something like, religion is retarded.
Oh,
right?
I saw that. Exchange.
And he comes back going, you can't say that. You might offend the retarded people. Too bad. There's no right on the planet not to be offended. Get over yourself.
Yeah, and you know what? My boss's son is retarded. He is 38 years old. And my boss, he has Down syndrome. And my boss even talks about him. And of course, he loves his son as being mentally retarded.
Well, he is. That's the reality.
And so that's not a bad word, but if you go over to the Atheism Plus forum and call somebody retarded, and retarded has a specific meaning, and anybody that wants to know, I realize that people don't have actual dictionaries anymore. Like, I'm an old guy. I actually do.
Oh, so do I.
Go to dictionary.com and look up the word retarded. And it really has nothing to do with a specific class of individual. What it really is saying is that you are, if somebody calls you retarded, you are backward.
Well, it means your development has slowed, which is exactly what the word means. Is that it doesn't even refer necessarily to an individual. It refers to anything. You know, if you're building something and you slow down when you're building it, your development is retarded. Okay, you know, but these people have taken these terms and built them up into something huge and meaningful that they really don't mean, and then pretend everybody has to play by their terms.
So how do we get people back to, I'm just going to call it scientific skepticism? And it doesn't have to do with science in particular, but just using the scientific method and skepticism to get away from, you know what, and I don't really mind. I'm deviating here a little bit because my mind is wandering, because this subject is huge for me. I don't mind having people talk about social justice, about feminism, even though I don't like any ism, by the way. I think we should do a show on isms.
Yeah, I think we're going to.
But or masculine isms, you know, MRAs and whatever.
Right.
But I don't have a problem with that. But I think that your views, in whatever it is, should be held up in the light of day.
Right.
And that people can look at them. And if you have a view, and everybody has a view. I have a view on things that I'm sure you disagree with. In fact, I know you disagree with some of my views on things. But and that's fine. But can we hold them up to the light of day and take them apart and say, you know what, you believe X, but you know what? Here's actually the real deal on X, and people not be offended by that, by taking their views. And a true skeptic would not be offended. A true skeptic would go, and you and I have done this because you've actually changed my mind on a couple of items. Hey, thanks for enlightening me on that. You know, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And that's what a true skeptic would do.
Well, anybody ought to be able to take their views, and people are welcome to their opinions. They're welcome to feel how they want to feel. But as much as people are welcome to have their own opinions, they're not welcome to have their own facts. They don't get their own reality where, you know, whatever makes them feel good is the rule of the day.
Well, here's the problem in some areas, and going back to Atheism Plus.
I know.
Is that they pull these, quote, facts out of the air. They're not really out of the air. They pull out these bogus, and they are totally bogus. I mean, I'm going to give away something here. I'm somewhat of a mathematician, and I have a lot of experience in statistics. And so these people pull out, for instance, these bogus studies on 1 in 4 women are sexually assaulted. Huh? Do you remember reading that?
Oh, absolutely. And it's complete nonsense.
It is completely nonsense. It doesn't happen. So that means if I'm in a crowd of 100 guys, just 100 male, 25 of them are rapists.
Or it could be one really busy rapist.
Yeah, but
statistically,
that's where they took that, by the way.
Of course.
Is that in a group of males of 20, 5 of them were rapists.
Yeah, but you have to remember the way that they're looking at it. They're not saying that, you know, 1 in 4 women are raped. They're saying 1 in 4 women are sexually abused, and then they take that term and make it mean anything. Meaning any guy, any woman who ever feels that a guy has looked at her sexually has now been sexually abused. Anybody who thinks that anybody's ever talked about her behind her back has now been sexually abused. So the statistic becomes ridiculous.
It's not really a statistic. As having some experience in statistics, you can make statistics say anything you want. Okay, and that's actually a truism. But a true statistician will take the data and mine it to take out all of the stuff that is in the extreme, and take out the biases from both sides to get down to the core of what the data is and put out really good data. And, for instance, it's been mentioned to me that staring at a woman, a nice-looking woman, on the street could be considered by her sexual harassment.
Which is, well, no, it's not.
Really?
It's not even just staring at a woman. It's even thinking, wow, that woman is nice-looking.
Yeah.
That's somehow harassing this woman. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Even if she never knows, you never look at her. I mean, if you...
I've only looked at her for 3 or 4 seconds and gone, wow, she's pretty.
No, even if you see somebody on TV or in a magazine and say, wow, she's pretty, you've just harassed this woman who has no idea you even exist.
And that's not skepticism.
Yeah, that's...
And again, I want to come back and say, because I wrote that blog post, guest post for you some weeks ago, this is a minority of people that are doing this, but they get the page hits on this, on their blogs about sexism and misogyny and whatever they want to come up with. It's a shame, and it's a distraction to me from being true skeptics. I mean, let's get back to the real world.
Right. Well,
I think everybody agrees, and we're both conservatives. And as soon as I announce to somebody that I'm a conservative, they think I'm one of those people, Glenn Beck, or somebody like that. And I go, oh no. I'm a real conservative. This guy's a neocon, and he conflates his religion, which Glenn Beck is a Mormon, a former drunk that converted to Mormonism, into his conservatism, and that's his worldview. Or Bill O'Reilly, or Sean Hannity, or go on and on and on. I say, no, I'm a really true conservative. I really don't give a... I don't want the government in my bedroom. I don't want the government in your bedroom. I don't want the government at my workplace or your workplace. I want the government to do what they were constitutionally entitled to do. Protect and defend the citizens of the United States,
Well, the funny thing is, now that you bring that up, if you look at the way that the neocons operate, and there are some really smart people out there who are neocons, who are able to skeptically evaluate positions, et cetera, but when it comes to their religion, they're off the reservation. But you look at the liberals who are doing the same thing, who can be very, very smart in some areas, but as soon as it comes to social justice issues, they're gone. They're off the logical reservation, and they're out just feeling and, hugging each other and singing Kumbaya.
Well, yeah, they are.
Much different.
No, they're not. And in fact, I read an article recently, and I wish I had it. It was in the last 2 or 3 weeks, is that the difference between liberals and conservatives, and of course, they're not talking about you and me, conservatives. They're talking neocons, is a hair. You pull a hair out of your head, right? Yeah. There's a difference between liberals and conservatives today. It's one hair. That's the only difference.
Oh, sure.
Neither side seems to be skeptical about anything. And we're talking about skepticism here, so I want to get back to that. About anything.
Both sides are just running on pure emotion.
They are, and they're trying to, of course, engage their base. I think that they are losing most people. I think they are. I think they're losing the middle. There's the 20% on the far left. There's a 20% on the far right, okay?
And there's a 60% in the middle who have nobody else to vote for.
Exactly. That's it. So let's go back and start looking at, when some senator on either party, the president, makes a claim, let's start looking at it and go, no, not rah, 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 but does this make sense? How do we implement this? And what's it going to cost? And, from the political side. So, yeah, you could be skeptical in politics.
Well, the funny thing is that when you're talking about politics, usually you'll get people on one side or the other who will be extremely skeptical of anything that the guys on the other side saying, But when it's their own party, they're drinking the Kool-Aid.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And so what we need to try and do is at least get the people, and again, that's the 20%, right?
Yeah.
But why don't we try and get the 60% that's in the middle, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, Socialist, Party, Communist Workers Party, whatever. I don't care who they are, what political party you belong to. Let's start looking at things from politics from a skeptical perspective. How does this make sense? First of all, why are we doing this?
Should we be doing this?
And then second, first, actually, should we be doing this? Second, why are we doing this?
Well, it should be first, is this true? Is whatever we're being told, is this the truth? If it is the truth, what does the truth mean? How can it be applied, etc.? If it's not the truth, we need to get at the truth. And 99% of the time, especially in politics, we're not being told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It's just a bunch of spin.
Yeah, and it is. It's always a spin. And the whole... Man, I really hate this term. Social justice. What the hell does that actually mean? I really haven't found a proper definition, at least for me.
It's justice for whatever groups they happen to feel that need justice.
And that's what I found. So, we've talked about this.
Yeah.
I give time to my food cooperative here, where we give food to poor people and homeless people. Okay? Well, that's my thing. Okay, I know I don't spend 40 hours a week there. I give maybe 8 hours a month there, volunteer. And for me, I feel good about myself. But for others, well, that's not enough, I have to maybe sometimes go out and find a homeless person and invite them in my house or something. I don't know.
Well, I'm not even worried about all that kind of thing. And whatever people go out and do is fine. The problem with, and I hate the damn Atheism Plus thing, but the problem with their social justice is they've picked their causes, and now instead of saying, well, I don't agree with those causes, or I don't want to deal with those causes, in order to be a decent human being, those are the causes you have to adopt in the terms that they define, and if you don't, you're a scumbag, to quote Richard Carrier, you need to crawl back into the sewers, you're a chud.
And remember, I had to ask you what that meant. Meant.
Sorry. Chud 2, damn good movie.
But yeah, and I agree that, for instance, I'll be honest, I really don't give a shit about LGBT issues. And I know plenty of gay people that are perfectly happy, perfectly content in their lives, that are, I wouldn't say friends, but are colleagues at work and are perfectly happy. And, if somebody asked me, if one of them asked me, for instance, to maybe sign a petition or something for whatever, I probably would. But I'm not out there saying that gays and lesbians and transgenders are being discriminated against, because from my point of view, where I work, there are plenty of those people. Okay? And when I say those people, what I mean is those people's sexuality. They are men, women, and they work and they do a great job, and they are perfectly happy and content.
Well, some of them are. And I think that we absolutely need to legalize gay marriage. They deserve to have the exact same rights as every other person on the planet.
I'm 100% behind that.
But let's be honest, the social justice people, they don't want to just have gays be, have the same rights as everyone else. They want to change the world. They want to change everyone's mind. And I'm sorry, but you cannot send out your alien mind control ray and make everybody suddenly go, oh, I love all these people. Well, some are going to love them, some aren't. You can't stop people's thought. All you can do is stop their actions and stop the discrimination.
Exactly. And it's because you can't make people change their minds, because people were raised in different ways. I'm going to give a gross example. Both my parents are dead, so they'll never hear this. My parents used to refer to black people in their home, in front of me and my sister, after we became adults, not when we were children, as niggers, okay? Of course, we were never encouraged, or we were actually discouraged from, because my dad was in the Air Force, so we lived around blacks, Asians, Hispanics, whatever. I grew up in the Air Force, and so your neighbors could be anybody. But after I grew up, and after I left home, I'd come home, and there'd be somebody on blah, blah, blah. I'm going to say like Jesse Jackson. I hear my dad go, well, that freaking nigger, blah, 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 blah. That's the way he grew up. My dad was born in the 20s. in the mid-20s. And that, to me, is unacceptable, but that's culture he was raised in.
Oh, sure. And people can change how they believe. I mean, I can go back the same way. My mother started out being a huge racist, and she's still alive, but she'll never listen to the podcast, so I can talk about it. But yeah, she...
Hi, Mom.
Yeah, hi. She would never accept having non-white friends. I think it was only when I started to date a girl who was half Chinese that she had, basically got slapped in the face and said, hey, this is the reality. And now she's not like that. Now she doesn't care. But there was a point in time, and all the time that I was growing up, where, I could not openly have black friends. I could not openly have Asian or Hispanic friends. My friends had to be white, because that's the kind of world that she was raised in. But she did end up getting over it, and today she's not like that.
I remember my mom passed away in summer of 2009. One of the last conversations I had with her before she died was that she said, I'm glad you're not a racist. And she just said this to me. She just blurted it out and looked at me and said, I'm glad you're not a racist. I go, well, what do you mean, Mom? She goes, well, you and your dad and I, my dad had passed a couple of years before, were raised differently than you were raised. And I'm glad that we didn't pass any of that on to you or your sister, because I have a sister. And I said, well, no, Mom, you never did, and thank you. That was one of the last conversations I ever had with my mother before she died. But, again, it comes back to, skepticism. You come from your point of view, right?
Yeah.
And everybody has a point of view. I have a point of view. You have a point of view on various topics. We could probably talk about anything from A to Z, scientifically, socially, culturally, whatever. And I guarantee you we're going to come up with some things that we disagree with each other on. And so how do we approach that? And that's the question I have for you.
The problem really is, yes, everybody has an opinion, but how are your opinions formed? How do you come to your opinion, and why do you maintain your opinion? It's one thing to talk to a racist, for example, talk to somebody who's in the KKK or the skinheads or whatever, and ask them, why do you think that these people over here are inferior to those people over there? Or talk about, the Phelps family. Why do you think God hates gays? Why do you think God exists at all? But, why do you think that this is true or that's true? And then you can have a rational discussion and say, all right, is this belief justifiable? Can you rationalize this belief? Can you provide evidence for this belief? And you can probably come to some kind of an agreement over, is this belief worth having or is this belief not worth having? Unfortunately, you've got way too many people out there who never reach that point. They start out with a completely emotional standpoint and move on, and they never move on from there. They're emotional from day one.
Well, again, as you said at the beginning of this, they start out with a conclusion.
Yep.
They've concluded that you and I, as conservatives, must be misogynists and anti-woman and anti-gay and anti-global warming and anti-whatever, and then show me the proof that I'm anti-gay, anti-woman, anti-global warming. Tell me what I've said that gives you the indication that I'm any of those three things. And they can't, because they've already come to a conclusion, because I'm out here saying I'm a conservative.
Yeah, well, we're out here saying the causes that you are standing up for, the radical feminism, the radical anti-racism, and there's a lot of things like that. These are things that are just not justifiable by evidence. These are things that you are believing only because it makes you feel good emotionally. When we ask for evidence, you have nothing.
It's a child thing. I don't remember whoever said this. It was originally attributed, and I remember this from like 40 years ago, to Mark Twain. Mark Twain never said this. When I was 18, I thought my father was the most ignorant person, and I'm paraphrasing here because I can't remember the exact quote, most ignorant person in the world. When I was 21, I realized how smart the old man really was. Okay, that was attributed to Mark Twain, even though he never said it.
Yeah.
And the reason I use that is to say there's a growth in people. When I was 18, I'm going to be honest, Cephas. Remember the 72 campaign?
Mm-hmm.
Nixon versus McGovern. Guess who I worked for? McGovern. Nope, I am not kidding you. Yeah, I know you're taking a breath there, but yeah, I worked for McGovern. A few years later, after college, when I was on my own, had to pay my own rent, because I was living in an apartment, of course. I had a car payment. I had to show up every day by 8 a.m. Suddenly, this whole, for me, and it doesn't happen to everybody, but for me, this whole radical liberalism that I believed in when I was a teenager ceased to exist. And that's when I started reading other stuff. I started reading Goldwater, and I know you're a Goldwater conservative like
Absolutely.
and saw that he was a really true conservative. And he didn't, today, if Goldwater was a younger man today, the liberals would be touting him as the savior of America because he didn't believe in government interference in people's lives.
But the liberals do. They want government to interfere. They want everybody to be able to what they can say, what they can believe, what they can think. They don't want, both sides want the government to control what you do.
But I think that Goldwater, when I read a couple of his books, I have them around here somewhere still. He was a true skeptic. And now he was a skeptic of government.
I don't know that he was a true skeptic because he was religious, but he was certainly skeptical of government.
I don't think he was religious, actually. I think that was a thing.
I don't know. I mean,
But if you've read any of his books, and I have a couple of them around here.
I've read all of them.
Oh, okay. I haven't read all of them. I've read a couple of them, and I'm not sure. The thing I believe about him is that he was, if he would have been elected in '64, for instance, I was 9. I'm giving away my age here. In '64, there would have been no Vietnam. There would have been no 58,000 killed in Vietnam. Yes. Would there have been a Civil Rights Act of '65? Yes, there would have been. But beyond that, I think that government would look a lot different today. I really think it would, because I think he was a skeptic of government mostly, and he distrusted government, even though he was a part of it for so many years, from the 40s on.
Well, we should distrust government. We should distrust everything until it's proven trustworthy.
So anyway, I want to really get back to the definition of a skeptic. I think it's somebody that looks at the world with open eyes, doesn't accept anything they're told without proof. That's a simple definition for me.
Right.
I don't discount things my friends say. Well, actually I do. But I don't question them on this. And one of the hard parts about being a skeptic is because you have close friends, you have loved ones that will tell you things. And, I'm not going to sit there and interrogate someone, a loved one, on something, okay? I'm just going to sit there, and when they say something, I go, uh-huh, mm-hmm.
I don't.
Well, no. I don't interrogate. You interrogate.
I do.
You interrogate your children?
If they do something stupid, absolutely.
Oh, no. My kid, if she does something stupid, yes, I interrogate her. But if she comes up and says, oh, blah, 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 I go, okay, well, whatever. We'll talk about that later.
I don't. If they come up to me and they say something, and now they've been raised to be skeptics. All right, my kids have from day one. If they come and say something absurd, I will say, all right, well, how do you know that? Where do you get that information? And encourage that kind of a discussion to go on, where in daycare, when they were probably 7, 8 years old, they went to a religious daycare because it was really the only one that was local that they could go to, and they would sit there and the other kids would be singing songs about God, and they'd be going, you guys are idiots, because they thought, they had that training to think about things, to ask questions, to be skeptical.
No. I'm not talking about things like that. I'm talking about, my kid, I get her Friday through Monday, and my daughter will sometimes go home and go, Johnny at school told me whatever, and I go, well, did you look that up? Did you try and verify that?
Right, and that's exactly what I've always done.
And she's 7.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do is that's what I'm putting it off. It's my little one is, and you've been through this, of course, already, because yours are both teenagers now.
Right.
But I'm trying to get mine. And, of course, she has to live part of the week with her mom, goes back and forth on things, And so somebody tells her mom something, but her mom goes, oh, wow, that's cool, and tells my kid. And so my kid brings it home to me on Friday evening and says, Mommy says blah, blah, blah. And I go, I don't say this to my kid. I go, I think Mommy's full of shit.
Well, you can put it in a good way. And seriously, I would absolutely do that. I absolutely do that. I would.
Say that.
I would.
Because she's 7, and
there's it's never too young to get them starting to think critically.
No. But I do start to try to get her to think critically. What I don't use in my own home, in my around my child is curse words. I was not brought up that way. I'm not going to sit around and go, use curse words in front of my child. And I could say, yeah, well, let's look at what Mommy said here. And let's look at this. She has her own resources. I mean, hell, man, I probably have no, I don't have as many computers in my home as you do. But
you don't.
But I have a couple, and so we get online sometimes and look it up, and oh wow, Mommy's wrong. Yeah, sometimes even Daddy's wrong. By the way, babe, if you don't get that, But again, it's about being a skeptic and raising your kids to question everything.
Right.
I mean, mine's a 7-year-old, so yeah, an adult. If I told her the sky was actually not blue but green, well, she might look up and go, yeah, you're wrong. And then I can make up some story about why she sees it as blue and not green. Well, she might believe me because I'm an adult. This goes back to religion. Jesus died on the cross and he was raised in 3 days.
Says who? Where's your evidence?
Yeah, but what about all the zombies that got out of their graves and walked around Jerusalem? What about all those people that got out of their graves? And
that nobody ever wrote down? What about all the things that the Romans, who were excellent record keepers, should have recorded about all this that they didn't? What about the sun stopping in the sky, or the sun having an eclipse in the sky?
The Romans might not have included a minor criminal, and they might have had a record, minor criminal, Jesus of Nazareth, and so they got lost. Okay, so that's possible, but how come no Jews, the Jewish faith, that's Israel, talked about the torn curtain in the temple? You think that, holy cow.
Or the eclipse of the sun, that people all over the planet, including huge swaths of sun worshippers who were literate and could write, would not have ever made any record of this.
And why is it, like I said, the whole, people came out of the graves and went around and, the zombies, and came out and talked to their, wait. The Jews buried their people. And after a year, took their bones out and put them in a crutch.
Yeah.
This little box, remember that? So these bones suddenly materialized and had flesh on them and started walking around?
Of course not.
Of course not. But this is actually in the New Testament. And so why are... I ask my preacher buddy all the time about this. Why are you not skeptical about this? Well, I am skeptical about that. Well, and that's not the truth. Well, why don't you preach the truth to your congregation? Silence.
Of course, because the truth doesn't matter. This is all faith. But by the same token, all the stuff that they talk about, radical feminism, that's all faith. Everything comes down to faith, and that's the whole point, is that these people are just not being skeptical of these subjects because they get some kind of emotional comfort out of it.
And it's an ideology, and skepticism is not an ideology, and neither is atheism. You could be an atheist and not be a skeptic. Do you agree with me on that?
Oh, absolutely.
And you could be a skeptic and not necessarily be an atheist.
That's where I disagree with you. You can be skeptical of lots of things.
Okay.
But you cannot be a skeptic, which is by definition somebody who's skeptical of everything.
I'm sorry. I misspoke.
Yes.
I misspoke. I agree with you on that. You can be skeptical and not be an atheist.
That's true.
That's what I really should have said. What I'm finding here in our world is a lot of people who claim to be atheists. Okay, that's fine. I don't disregard that. I don't claim you're not. And they claim to be skeptics as well that won't look into themselves. As I said earlier, you've told me a couple of things about, we've had some offline conversations about some things that I thought, and I went like, let me look into this. Maybe I'm wrong. And you know what? Oops. When somebody presents you with evidence, if you're not willing to change your mind, you've just gone into the world of a religionist to me.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. There is no difference between what a lot of these people do who refuse to be skeptical or refuse to question their own beliefs and the things that people do on faith. There is no difference whatsoever.
Where do you think the state of skepticism is today?
Generally, pretty bad. And I don't think it's going to change anytime soon over a large population.
Okay, and so what can we do about this, if we can do anything about this?
To be honest, we can't do anything not individually. I mean, as a group of skeptics, we can certainly start to teach our children in schools at a young age how to use the skeptical tools. That's going to take several generations. As individuals, when we're talking to people, we can insist on people being skeptical. We can insist on evidence. We can insist on people making good decisions. A lot of the time, that's just not going to work. And especially with religion, you can sit there and say, I want you to have a reason to believe that. And they're going to say, fuck you, I believe what I want to believe, and I don't have to prove anything to you. What do you do at that point? There's not really much you can do.
Okay, and I agree with everything you just said. And now we're going to move on to...
You believe what?
No. Oh, no.
In the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of dramatic developments in the Catholic world, from the forcible release of 12,000 documents from the Los Angeles Catholic Archdiocese detailing 120 pedophile priests, to the most recent, the Pope stepping down supposedly due to health concerns. We're seeing an unprecedented shakeup in the Catholic community. Some of us would say it's about time, especially the sex abuse scandal, which has gone on in the Catholic world for many decades, where thousands upon thousands of priests have been convicted of inappropriate sexual contact with young boys and girls, abusing their priestly position for their own sexual gratification. There are even links going right to the top, where Cardinal Ratzinger, in his pre-Pope days, drafting internal rules to keep sex abuse cases out of the hands of the authorities. So what happened to the Church, and how can people make sure it never happens again? 10 years ago, the Los Angeles Archdiocese was hit with a lawsuit, which they lost, which demanded that they turn over all the records, the names, etc., of all the pedophile priests that they had. And it turns out they actually had quite a few people that they had records on. In fact, their lawyer initially said that they had over 30,000 pages that needed to be released. This went on in court for a long, long, long time. In fact, it went on for over 10 years after the decision. Why did it go on for over 10 years? Because there's a 10-year statute of limitations for accusing priests of pedophilia.
Of anybody, by the way.
Well, it's 10 years for the priests, and it's 5 years for any of the conspirators, including Cardinal Mahoney, who was personally responsible for shuffling a lot of these people around.
And that's what I want to get to. I want to get to that evil bastard, Mahoney.
Absolutely.
So, move on.
Well, the thing
tell
is,
me about this.
There's direct evidence now that we actually have this paperwork, and you have to, going back a little bit, they initially tried to release 12,000 pages out of the 30,000 they claim they had. They tried to release 12,000 pages, and they redacted all the names. They blacked out all the names of all the priests and all the people who were in the hierarchy who moved them around. Yeah. And the court said, no, you can't do that. Then it took them another couple of months to unredact them. So they're really saying they went through and used a black marker on the originals instead of just giving over copies. Or at least they say that's what they did. I don't believe anything that they say that they did. But we did find that Mahoney and a lot of the people in the Archdiocese were personally responsible for this. He knew what he was doing was wrong. There's an email exchange where he was talking with another, I forget his name, I've put a link to it, but he recognized that the Church faces both civil and criminal prosecutions over the actions of a pedophile priest, but instead of defrocking the priest, he moves him to another poor diocese where he will be able to continue to rape small children.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. Because Mahoney just retired, right?
Before this happened.
Before this happened. Okay, so can he be held criminally responsible?
Absolutely not.
Why?
Because they delayed the release until the statute of limitations had expired. These cases only went up until 10 years ago. Which was the point.
You know what's a shame is that states. I think this law needs to be changed.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Wait. Let me say something here. Murder. If I kill you 30 years later, if the cops figure out that I've killed you and that I'm responsible for your death, I can be prosecuted for it.
And so long as
but wait, it's 5 to 10 years for child abuse?
Yep.
I mean, in some cases, it's as little as 5 years.
Yep.
That's That's horrible.
It's reality. Doesn't matter if it's horrible.
I know
it's
reality. And as you know, I'm not a liberal, but why is that? Why is it that I can commit murder and be prosecuted 30 years later, but child abuse, I can't be?
Take that up with your state legislators.
No. Explain it to me. Explain me your opinion on that.
I didn't say I agreed with it. I just said that's the way it is. We can argue all day whether or not the law should be the way that it is. The fact is we can only deal with the law the way it is at the moment. The fact is, under this ruling, the statute of limitations is only 10 years for pedophile priests, and it's only 5 years for conspirators. We can go back later and try to change the law so that it's longer in the next case. And let's be honest, this is the Catholic Church. There will be many, many more cases. If you want to get pissed at somebody, get pissed at the Catholic Church, who specifically waited until the 10 years had passed before they released the records. That's who you should be mad at.
I hate the fucking Catholics that believe that everything is related to something they believe. You put a dick in a woman, right?
Yeah.
And you get a child out of that. And so what are the Catholics doing to prevent children in places like, holy shit, Africa, where there's 35, I just read this recently, 35 million AIDS patients.
Oh, come on, they just tell them not to use condoms. What do you want? Well, the majority of the problem in Africa with AIDS is they are telling people, whether you have AIDS or not, even if you are a married couple, you cannot use a condom to stop the transmission of AIDS. Not just because it stops the transmission of AIDS, because they don't want anybody to stop anybody from breeding. Even if they have millions of children, as you say, who they can't feed now, their policy is you cannot use any kind of birth control, no matter what you're using the birth control for, if it does stop pregnancy.
Let's go into the final word.
I find it interesting that the Catholic Church, on the same weekend that the Pope resigned, held a conference to find a way to attract young people to the church. We might make jokes about their reasons for it, but the fact is the Catholic Church is totally out of touch with reality today. They're convinced that the problem is how they're presenting their message, when the real message is that they're presenting it in the first place. I think that we're really seeing that the Pope is resigning his position, not only over the sex scandals, and let's face it, he is, because they're catching an awful lot of flack for the Catholic handling of all the sex scandals, but we're seeing that the Pope and the entire Catholic Church is really completely out of touch with reality. They just don't understand what people want, why they go to a religion. I've seen so many Catholics who've said they need to go back to pre-Vatican II, where everything is in Latin, because that'll bring back the kids to Catholicism. I don't get these people.
I don't either, because, and I'm a person that actually speaks Latin. I don't get it. Let's move on. Let's come into the 21st century and get out of the 13th century, which is what Catholicism is.
Well, really, it's what all religion is. People just don't need religion anymore. That's why 33% of people between 18 and 28 are non-religious. These people think that just changing making it colorful and making it happy and coming up with some new songs is going to get these people embracing these beliefs. It's the beliefs that are the problem.
Well, I don't know if you remember after the you may be too young. After the Vatican thing in the 60s, where they came across, and then, of course, the Catholic Church, of course, the Protestants, of course, did the same thing. They came out and they had, guitars and drums and whatever, and they're massive. After Vatican II, whatever it was, in what was it, 66? I can't remember. Pope Paul VI came out with that, and that's actually where the evangelical thing happened. I mean, it didn't happen with the Baptists or the Episcopalians or the whatever. It started with the Catholic Church in 1966, and that's where it came out of. And then, of course, the Protestant churches picked it up and did the same thing.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. But I mean, they've been through this before, where they said, "Hey, we need to appeal. We need to take our religion, and we need to appeal to the young." But they've failed every time they've tried it.
Well, they have and they haven't. I mean, again, people, depending on where they live, on their cultural background. Yeah. Well, yeah, of course they've deceived. I'm going to say that, deceived people into believing that. But then again, I think with the atheism movement, and I think it should be a movement. It's not a movement. Should do is to go out to different towns and cities.
Well, my only problem with doing something like that is it really makes atheists no better than the religionists who are out there trying to convert the world. And I don't think we really need to go out and try to convert people to our way of thinking. All we need to do is demonstrate that their way of thinking isn't rational, that it doesn't have any evidence to support it. And obviously that's the case. We just have to get the word out, as they say. To wrap this up, I think that the Catholic Church is in for a lot of changes in the near future, and very few of them positive from their perspective. We've seen archdioceses go bankrupt after sex abuse payouts. They're seeing record drops in attendance. I think the Catholics are suffering the biggest losses of any Christian denomination, whereas non-believers are seeing phenomenal growth. The Pope is leaving office, the first Pope to do so in over 600 years, at least the ones that didn't go out feet first. And the Church is freely admitting that it has no clue how to appeal to new members and the young. I'm not sure what this means for them in the long term, but it seems to indicate to me that in the short term, their problems are not over by a long shot. In fact, it seems to me that their problems are just beginning. This is sad, again from their perspective, because they don't seem to be learning their lessons. In the Los Angeles case, records dating back to the 1950s were released, but the sex abuse has by no means stopped. People like Cardinal Mahoney, while saying they are sorry today, are feeding us a cock and bull story that they just didn't know what they were supposed to do with child molesting rapists back in the day. Seriously? Someone had to tell them that child rapists ought to be turned over to the authorities, yet this seems to be the best they can do. If they really want to appeal to people today, they should not, as I've said before, go back to pre-Vatican II ways. They should eject their primitive beliefs and join the modern era. Personally, I want to see them fail miserably, but at least I'd like it to be a fair fight. Make your choices, make your changes, do your best, and when you fail anyhow because your religion is losing ground in the modern day, then I think the rationalists and skeptics among us can feel even better watching their golden monuments turn to dust.
Hey, thank you for listening to us tonight. We really appreciate it, and I know we rambled a lot, and we have a habit of doing that. But I hope you like our rambling a bit. And if you want to comment on anything we said, please go to the website and enter your comments. I guarantee you we will respond.
Absolutely.
We will respond to all of your comments. Whether positive or negative, we will respond to all. Thank you very much for listening to us.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week. You've been listening to the Bitchspot Report with your hosts, Cephas and Out West. You can follow us on Twitter by following Bitchspot1 or JEH704. Visit our website at report.jdragononline.com. Tune in again next week for more conservative atheist rants. Thanks for listening.